Good morning, sir. Welcome you for this
Thank
wonderful
you.
session. So, thank you very much for joining us. So, I welcome you all for this Sky Campus Digital Knowledge Series, Season 7 of Day 2. So, today the topic for Mr. Surya Prakash sir is Accelerating Industry 4.0 and what is the perspective from learning and development? Because all along for a couple of days before, we heard a lot of guest speakers speaking about which are all the technologies which are important in Industry 4.0. So to say a few words about Sir Surya Prakash sir is currently the global head talent transformation of Wipro Digital Operations, and over 23 years of experience in various leadership roles and leading IT and ITS organization. So prior to Wipro, sir was working with Microland, with Computer Garage and few multinational organizations. And he has an extensive experience in setting up of learning and development function for various organizations across the globe. And he also was the pioneer in setting up the training function for Wipro's BPS, which spanned across 10 locations not only in India to Brazil, to Poland and Romania for that matter. And he also has a vast experience in building or setting up of knowledge center of excellence, implementing various training models for the rural BPO setups. And even though he is from learning and development, he is a leadership development trainer. He delivered lot of training session to various leadership teams, including change management, including leadership in VUCA world, learning agility, and the list goes on. And he is not only a speaker of Indian repute, he is a speaker of international repute, and he is also recognized as one of the 25 most talented training and development leaders in the world by World HRD Congress. So that is the one recognition which Sarah has received. So with this, I wholeheartedly welcome Mr. Surya Prakash sir on behalf of ICT Academy and the entire academic community present here to hear your wonderful presentation on the topic Industry 4.0, why learning and development is very, very important, how we have to live, how learning and development will change post-COVID is what we would like to hear from you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sarvanan, for giving me this opportunity to be part of this webinar. And I'm really excited to be part of this. I know there are close to 2,000 educators, academicians, professors who are attending this session. It's an exciting opportunity. Thank you, ICT Academy. Thank you, Mr. Sarvanan, for giving me this opportunity. ICT Academy today is doing phenomenal work in bridging the gap between academics and industry. So I think you deserve all the congratulations and compliments for doing this, for bringing an industry professional like me to this forum where I have an opportunity to interact with educators, academicians, university administrators, and so on. One small disclaimer at the beginning. The disclaimer is I am not an educator. I'm not an academician. I am not in charge of any university or educational institution. So it might be a little, it might feel a little out of place where an industry leader is talking to a group of academicians and educators. So what I want to make it clear at the beginning is I am not here to give any sermon. I'm not here to enlighten you or educate you. I am here to share some of my perspectives with you. Perspectives from the industry, which might act like an outside-in view, which you might consider that as perspectives from the industry or the best practices from the industries that you may want to look at taking away and implementing some of them in your education setting. Because at the end of the day, as a learning and development professional and as academicians, the distinction though there is a distinction between you and me, I represent the industry and you represent the educational institutions or universities, etc. But the common factor which overlaps between these two roles or these functions is learning. I try to drive learning in a corporate setting. You try to drive learning and education for youngsters, for young boys and girls, young men and women, and you try and shape them into future industry professionals. My job starts when they're already trained by you, educated by you, and then they come to the corporate, and then we try to see how we can further enhance their learning. So I think though there is a difference, there is also something that is overlapping between both of us. As I said, I'm not an academician, but I'm a practitioner. I'm a practicing learning and development professional working for an organization. Now, the topic that we have picked up today is accelerating Industry 4.0 and the learning and development perspective. So I have a small presentation for you, which I will bring up in the next few minutes. And our plan for me is to talk for about next 30 minutes or so, and which will take us till about 10:45 or so. And then we would have an interactive session, Q&A, for about 10 to 15 minutes before we wrap up the session today. So what I'm going to do now is in the next few seconds, I'm going to bring up the presentation that I have for you, ladies and gentlemen. I need a confirmation that you can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. Okay.
You can go ahead.
So
you can
this
also,
is what we're going to talk about today.
If you want, you can go off the video.
Okay, if it doesn't disrupt too much, I will. If it creates trouble, then probably I will go off. And then I am right now on the screen.
Okay, sir.
And then let's see how it goes. But if there is a disruption, then I will probably switch on. All right. So accelerating Industry 4.0, transforming higher education, and the learning and development perspective. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my esteemed intellectuals, academicians, we are actually right now in the middle of Industry 4.0. These are interesting and exciting times where technology has virtually revolutionized everything. We have started to live with technology. We have started to work with machines. Our personal, professional, social, and national lives, all of these have converged today, and technology is virtually impacting every aspect of our life, including education. So this is the beauty, the excitement, and the characteristic of Industry 4.0. As all of you know, that every 30, 40 years, we have moved from one industrial revolution to another. In the 70s, where we had Industrial Revolution 1, when we started with steam engines, and then we slowly moved to Industrial Revolution 2, where there was further progress. There was discovery of petroleum, there was discovery of gas, and manufacturing expanded. And we moved to Industrial Revolution 3.0, where evolution of computers and networking and the chips and then semiconductors, electronics, that kind of evolved phenomenally, and we saw the beauty and the utility of technology. And then we moved on to Industry 4.0, and then we are part of that movement today, and where the when the physical world and the digital world and the biological world, I think it's kind of everything has converged. And the prediction is by the end of the century, it's probably almost impossible to distinguish between men and machines. It'll be difficult to conceive um, anything that machines cannot do. Of course, there will be few things the machines will not be able to do in future as well. But the differences, the demarcation between machines and men is pretty much shrinking. Now, as we move forward in the discussion, there is something interesting that Peter Drucker, the very famous management guru, very renowned and well-known management exponent, talked about something very, very interesting, alarming in the year 1997, almost about 23 years ago. And he said, 30 years from now, the big university campuses will be relics. Universities won't survive. It is as large a change as when we first got the printed book. Peter Drucker almost have predicted everything with absolute certainty. And his prediction in the year 1997 is kind of alarming. It's just 30 years from now, universities won't survive. They would become extinct. They would disappear. And that change would be as big as the change when we first got the printed book. The printed book, the first time we got a printed book, that revolutionized education. This change is going to be as big as that. So what does it mean? It's scary, it is alarming, it is challenging. Are we worried about the future? 30 years from 1997 is not very far, it's just around the corner. Will university survive? Will higher education institutions providing higher education survive or not survive?
Yes, this is where we were before I got dropped. So I was talking about Peter Drucker's prediction. So the question that I was asking before I got dropped is it alarming? Is it scary? Is it a matter of concern? Or what is it? My response to this question would be, yes, universities are likely to become extinct, provided or in case they refuse to adapt to the needs of our times today. If they refuse to adapt, if they refuse to change, they would no longer be relevant. They would not be required anymore. So the good news is, if we adapt, if we decide, if we agree, if we are prepared to change, we could prove Peter Drucker wrong. And how can we do that? But before we talk about it, let's see what's happening in our industry, what's happening in our economy as we move on. Mr. Sabaran, as we move on to the next slide, we can see some of the interesting trends which are impacting our industry. The most important trend that we are going to see is gig economy going to become the reality of our life. When I say gig economy, in the past, employees, professionals used to work for one organization for many, many years. That's going to change now. In the near future, we would see people working for multiple companies at the same time. We'll also see there are freelancers, there are part-time employees, there are employees, there are spouses who have decided to take a break and take care of the children, allow their wives or their husbands to go and work. We would see evolution of startups, and we'll see more and more youngsters jumping into the entrepreneurial fray and so on. So freelancing, contract employment, part-time employment, employees working for multiple employers at the same time, flexi working hours, etc., are going to become the order of the day. So professional skills in an economy like that are going to be very different for from skills which were required for full-time employment. Now the question is, or the important point is, that's also going to impact education, because the way we educated people for the economy in the past and the way we need to prepare our youngsters for the gig economy, the education method, the approach needs to be different. It can't be the same. Knowledge is fast becoming obsolete. While universities claim that they're knowledge houses, the repository of knowledge, we'll also have to keep in mind that knowledge is fast becoming obsolete. So knowledge is power, but this power is becoming obsolete very, very quickly unless we keep updating ourselves all the time. And the universities needs to ask these questions to themselves. Are they really updating? Are they really updating the knowledge repositories? Are they really updating the knowledge management systems they have? Are they keeping pace? Employers are going to value skills over qualification. 15 top companies in the world are front runners. Let's go to the next slide quickly to look at the names of these 15 companies. These are the 15 companies which have announced that they don't want to look at qualification anymore. They don't care if somebody's an MBA or not an MBA, somebody's an engineer or not an engineer, doesn't matter. If he or she has the right skills, if he can do coding, even if he's not an engineer, will recruit. If he has the right leadership skills, business acumen, doesn't matter if he's an MBA or not an MBA, will still recruit. Google, EY, IBM, Bank of America, some of the important names, the Hilton hotels, they have already announced that we are not going to look at educational qualification. What does it mean? Well, does it mean good things for universities or bad things? We need to ask these questions to ourselves. Now, let's move on to the next slide, and then we'll continue to look at the trends. Alternate modes of learning are available. So university professors, I was addressing a group of professors in a engineering college in Bangalore. And after my session, a couple of professors walked up to me and then said, Mr. Mohapatra, today it's extremely difficult to teach students. I said, why? They said, look, when we teach something, some of the students would stand up and then say, teacher, you are wrong. Google is saying something else. I found something else in Google. So what I'm trying to say is there is alternate modes of learning available. Now young children, young boys and girls have stopped asking questions in the classroom. They think it's a waste of time because they can Google it and find the answer. That's a trend which is impacting our education today. There are alternate modes of learning which is available. Self-directed learning. Virtually every university today is offering a MOOC course. There are the Udemy's and then the edX, the Coursera's of this world, competing with the best of universities today. Industries and products are going to become, there are many industries and products are going to become the things of the past. We just saw the COVID-19 crisis, and it has actually pushed many industries into a disruptive mode. Some of the industries are actually struggling to survive today. Will the tourism industry and travel industry remain the same after the COVID-19 crisis? Most likely not. Many industries will become extinct. Many companies will become extinct. Many products will become things of the past, like the postcard or like the gramophone record or like the typewriter, which have already become things of the past. Technology is shifting the balance of power, putting knowledge at the center stage. So technology is shifting the balance of power. The power rested with people who had money in the past, or people who had muscle power, or people who had political power. But today, balance of power is shifted to people who have knowledge. I can think of a doctor, a homeopath in Indore, who has lakhs of patients across the globe. He was a small-time homeopath doctor, and he used to probably see about 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 patients every day. Today, he has hundreds of them. And one day, he realized when he joined a social media site called Facebook, a platform called Facebook. Then he bumped into something called Facebook Messenger, and then he realized that is a powerful tool. He made friends on Facebook, and he, using Facebook Messenger, wrote to them saying, I'm a doctor, I'm a homeopath. If you have any problem, I'm willing to give you free prescription. If you get cured, if you get any benefit, you may pay me if you want. That's how his patients base, client base started increasing. And from from a dozen such customers, it increased to a few hundred, few thousands. And then he has more than a lakh patients from all over the world. Technology has shifted the power, balance of power. We are now living through times of accelerated change, and change is widespread changes, all pervasive changes happening all the time, and change is happening at an accelerated pace. And some of the black swan events, like a 9/11, or like a Brexit, or like COVID-19, can change things in such a manner. Um, what we did not see in decades, we can see though that impact in a few weeks. We saw that with COVID-19 crisis coming in. Most organizations overnight decided to go to the work from home model. And then some companies have announced that in the next 2 to 3 years, about 50% of their workforce will be working from home. This did not happen in more than 100 years, but it just happened in a few weeks. That's the power of a black swan event, unpredictable, disruptive event that can bring about changes at a rapid pace. The retail, the e-commerce business probably grew to about 18 to 20% in a span of about 4 to 5 decades ever since the e-commerce business started. But in the last few weeks, it has jumped 27%. So what did not happen in decades can happen in weeks because of black swan events like COVID-19 or Brexit, or for that matter, 9/11 and so on. Another important trend which is impacting education is attention span of learners is reducing. So we need to keep in mind that our students do not have an attention span which is more than 7 minutes. So every 7 minutes, they are going to lose attention. You are going to lose their attention. So we need to do something dramatic, something very different to keep their attention going, to retain their attention. That's impacting our education. Now let's do a deep dive into the challenges that we have today. The challenges are far too many in our education system, in schools, colleges, higher education, universities. I think what's missing today is quality. Quantity is covered, but quality is missing. Focus on rote learning and pattern recognition rather than learning through application. So we still expect students to prepare for exams, memorize, remember, reproduce in the examination, rather than learn through application. Lack of quality faculty members is a concern. I don't blame educational institutions. The most talented youngsters today don't want to come into education. They want to pick up a job in IT or technology or some other industry. Curriculum is not keeping pace with change. Lack of research in academia institutions. Lack of motivation in taking risks. Unfortunately, the last one is something to ponder over, something to contemplate. You may or may not agree with me, but if you ask students, if you ask parents, why do you send your child to a university, to a B school, or to a technical education institution? Most of them would say that we would send them and we would pay for degree, not for education. That's the reality. In some similar sessions in the past, I did some polls and surveys, and more than 50% of academicians confirmed that most students pay for a degree and not for education. Now, before we talk about the change and the learning and development perspective, let's figure out what are the students expecting from us. Students are expecting personalization from us. They want an education which is highly personalized to my needs. It's not going to help me if it has been custom made to 20 participants in a classroom or 50 students in a classroom. Is it highly personalized for me or not? If it is generalized for 50 people in the classroom, I'm not very keen. I'm not very interested. Today, Toyota on the same assembly line can churn out many cars of different types and different colors and different models, just because they have achieved that level of personalization. Can you achieve that level of personalization? Our students are expecting this from us. Students are also expecting flexibility. What is that flexibility? Can I learn at my own pace? Can I learn from wherever I am? Can I come for 1 week and then go back and complete my assignment at work? Can I come back and then continue? They're really looking for flexibility in education. They're looking for adaptability. Is the education system, is the curriculum adaptable to my needs, to my challenges, my pace? If I'm learning faster, can it also move faster with me? So if I'm capable, can I crunch my master degree journey into 1 year? Can I do it in 1 year if I can move faster? And if I'm not faster, will it adapt to my need, and then can I do it in 3 years? And that's the kind of adaptability that students are expecting today, because of COVID-19. There are many industries which may become extinct. There are many companies which will go out of industry. Now the question is, if my industry is going to become extinct, can I quickly pick up new skills so that I find a job in another industry, in another domain, in another subject? Can university provide accelerated learning, accelerated skill building opportunities for me? That's what students are expecting. Technology enabled curriculum. So is the curriculum technology enabled? So can I have a MBA program which is entirely online? I don't have to come to classroom at all. The next one is purpose. Is education teaching me how to find a job, or is also helping me realize and pursue my purpose in life? So this is what students are expecting from universities, from schools, from engineering colleges. Personalization, flexibility, adaptability, curriculum which is enabled by technology. I don't have to come to classroom at all. Is it going to help me find my purpose? The last thing that students are expecting from universities is, can you teach me what machines cannot do? Because as a student, I know that my job will one day be taken away by machines. I will not have my job. I will have to look for another job. But can you teach me things that machines cannot do so that I retain my job forever? Machines can never take away my jobs. As we look at the next slide, the question that I'm going to ask you is, are you feeling optimistic or pessimistic about the future? You may use the chat window and mention what you feel, optimistic or pessimistic. Mr. Sarvan, you can take a look at the chat responses and quickly tell me what responses that you see. And in spite of talking about all the challenges, you are still optimistic. So that's the biggest highlight of our session today, that we are resilient, we are hopeful, we're optimistic. We don't want to give up. So now let's talk about what's changing in the learning space. I will share my perspective as a corporate learning and development professional. As you can see in this slide, there is a left side of the spectrum and there's a right side of the spectrum. On the left side of the spectrum, you see the traditional way of learning, teaching, training. On the right side, you would see what's the trend, what is changing. In the past, we had open enrollment in corporates. We used to announce training calendars, employees used to register. Now we have moved away from there, to learning journeys. So we are not announcing calendars. Of course, we are announcing calendars for generic skills, but for very specific skills and for very specific role development, we are announcing journeys. So leadership journey is an example. For our frontline managers, we have leadership journeys. For our mid-level managers, we have leadership journeys, which are not just one or two classroom sessions. It's a combination of self-paced learning, classroom learning, projects work, mentoring, industry visits, all of that. So it's a journey. It's not an event. It's not that employees come into a classroom, attend a three-day session and go back. That's an event. But we are not interested in just in events. We have stitched together events, self-assignments, self-work, projects, mentoring and coaching sessions, industry visits, etc. We have stitched all of this together to create journeys. That's where the trend is. Our sessions, our learning programs are not topic driven anymore, they're business need driven. So we don't decide a topic and then invite people to attend, but we go to business, understand what is the business need, and then we design programs around that. We are moving our way slowly from formal only education to a mix of formal and informal. So formal is classroom sessions, self-paced learning, etc. Informal is where you learn through peers, through your social network, through enterprise social media platforms, through discussion forums, through mentors, and so on. The shift today is from concepts, knowledge to skills and behavior. So that's what you need in the real world. Of course, you would need concepts and knowledge, but in the real world, you need to have the skills and the right behavior to deal with the real world. Our learning in the past used to be generally low tech. Today, it's high tech. We leverage online, social, mobile, videos, all of that to make learning really high tech and more technologies. Managers in the past used to be passive. Today, managers are actively involved. Managers have they have the skin in the game. They have a stake in the development of their people. In the past, in organizations, managers used to believe that training is the responsibility of the L&D function. But that game is changing. Now, managers today have a very important role to play in the development process of the employees. There were minimal measurements in the past. Today, ROI is important. Return on investment in training. Measuring behavior change, business impact has become the order of the day. If you look at the shift, next slide, it talks about the shift from old to the new. So today, L&D is looked at not just as strategy enablers, we're also looked at as strategy accelerators. We are not just quality services provider, we are proactive influencers. We are not just content creators, we are content curators, because the best of content is available today. We don't have to create all the content, but you need to curate the right content and direct people to the right content. We don't just have defined structured learning, we also build culture of continuous learning. That's a shift that we're making. We looked at ourselves as trainers, instructors, teachers, professors in the past. But today we look at ourselves as facilitators of learning networks. We used to teach skills, but today we continue to do that, but we also teach effective learning habits, because if people pick up learning habits, they would figure out how to learn. That was set content in the past, but our content today is dynamic. It changes by the day. It evolves through the process. We had training events. Today we have learning journeys. Yesterday, learning was information silos. Today, it is all about connected information. That's a shift that's happening to align to Industry 4.0. We're also focused on developing a growth mindset in our employees, where they're willing to experiment, try new things, because learning happens only when you apply. Learning doesn't happen in the classroom alone. So we're driving that growth mindset where employees take charge of their learning, and they learn through picking up experiences, projects, and assignments. And they're not scared of failure. They're not scared of making mistakes, because the only way you can learn in the real world is by making mistakes. Some of the skills that we believe are important for L&D practitioners, which I believe would be important for academicians, professors, associate professors, teachers in colleges and universities. The top 10 skills that all of us need to keep in mind. I'm going to read out them quickly, verbatim, and then we can reflect for a couple of minutes. Empathy and love for people, influencing and persuasion skills, performance consulting, ability to cope with ambiguity, connect with Gen Next, creative thinking and innovation, leveraging data analytics, understanding business ecosystem, machine learning, using technology and digital platforms. You'll be surprised to see that nowhere I talked about excellent training delivery skills, excellent content creation skills, and so on. I didn't talk about it. But what I talked about are performance consulting. I talked about creative thinking. I talked about ability to leverage technology and digital platforms, understanding a business ecosystem. That's how I see the role of the professor in the university or educational institutions. That's how I see the role of an L&D practitioner in industry evolving. Are we equipping our professors, our teaching staff, our faculty members to pick up these skills, to develop these skills? Because they need to become performance consultants. They need to solve real life problems, because that's how they can enable the students to solve problems when they go to the real world and start working for corporates, run their own business, and so on. Now, we can quickly move on to the opportunities. And if you look at this slide, you can see the pictures of a few famous business industry icons. If you keep clicking, you would see the pictures of 6 industry icons. Some of them are Steve Jobs, and then and Bill Gates and Dhirubhai Ambani, and so on. And what is strikingly common between them, where is all of them were business tycoons. They're very, very successful industrialists and businessmen. What is also common between all 6 of them is that they never graduated from a university. That's common, and that's interesting. So, which essentially means, if you go to the next slide, that they had something which universities do not teach, and they could still manage without a university degree because they had those skills. And what academia do not teach students today? They do not provide them the ability to think. They do not prepare them to deal with failure. They do not prepare them, give them or provide them the ability to deal with ambiguity to tolerate frustration, ability to influence, emotional intelligence, ability to love. But in real life, in the real world, if you want to become successful in industry, in business, in politics, in social work, as a startup entrepreneur, as a manager in a company, organization, you need to have the skills. You need to have the ability to think, ability to deal with failure, ability to deal with ambiguity, ability to influence, high degree of emotional intelligence, ability to show empathy and love. These are important skills. And if you remember what I said some time ago, that students also expect us to teach them what machines can't do. And most of these things machines cannot do. Machines do not have emotional intelligence. They do not know how to show love. They do not know how to deal with ambiguity and so on. So these skills can be very, very powerful if we can find a way to teach our students these skills. Now, how can we step up the game as universities, and what are the perspectives as a learning and development practitioner I can share with you? I can share with you a few things. Experiential learning. It's important that we make experiential learning part of our curriculum. This is what happens in Germany. In Germany, they spend a day in the classroom in the university campus. They spend remaining 3 days on the shop floor in automobile factories and other factories, other manufacturing setups. I'm talking about technical education. You'll have to get their hands dirty. Experiential learning is the way forward. But our learning is largely academic, theoretical, and conceptual. We need to stop spoon feeding students. We need to teach them to fish. We need to create an environment, of course, a safe environment, where they get an opportunity to fail. In the lab, if they blow up something, it should be okay. We should allow them to do that. Because if they operate in an environment of fear, they will never shine, they would never excel. Multidisciplinary education and build a hybrid skills model is the future. If you talk about doctors today, is it enough if they're good in their specialization, like medicine or specialization in let's say spine or specialization in ENT or specialization in heart or kidney or etc. Is that enough? It is not enough, because some of these doctors will be in the operation theater and they'll be working with sophisticated machines today. They need to know how to operate these machines. The engineers who operate these machines, they need to understand some aspects of healthcare. They need to understand how is the doctor going to use this machine. They need to understand those aspects of healthcare. Doctors need to understand how to operate machines. So the future is about multidisciplinary education. Recently, Google announced that they have created a device. Using that device can read the retina of the eye and predict if that person will have cancer in the next 6 months or not. Very interesting and useful device. A device can read the retina of the eyes and can predict if somebody will have cancer in the next 6 months. Can you tell me, the guy who has invented this device is a doctor, cancer specialist, or is a technology specialist? Probably both. Probably he understands both, isn't it? That's the power of multiple disciplinary education. Because if you only know more and more and more and more about less and less and less, you might reach a scenario where we don't know anything. So it's important that we need to, of course, know more and more and more about one thing, but we also need to know more and more and more about many things. That's what multidisciplinary education is important. Students of economics also need to understand technology. Students of technology and computer science needs to understand economy, how finance. And that's how multidisciplinary education has its prominence today. Can we provide a faculty member to stint in the industry? Can we send them for 2 years to work for organizations, solve real problems, then come back and teach students? They can teach out of experience, not teach out of curriculum or theory or books. Can we define accountability, measurable metrics for academics? Like we have in corporates, there are goals, there are KPIs, can we also hold academic institutions for, can we hold them accountable? Can we have accountable metrics? If you move to the next slide, it talks about, if we begin this journey for transformation, we can see 2 roads ahead of us. As you see in this slide, one road leads to mediocrity, another road leads to excellence. There is no third road. One road leads to mediocrity, another road leads to excellence. There is no third path. There is no alternative. The choice is ours, which path we want to take. Do you want to take a path as an education provider, academic institution? Do you want to take the path to mediocrity, or do we want to take the path to excellence? The choice is ours. We can become an average institution, or we can become an institution of excellence. But if you choose the path to excellence, then we need to make the shift. And the shift, as you can see here, is going to be about the right tool set, the right skill set, the right mindset. So we need to drive the mindset change as academicians. We need to develop the right skills within ourselves and within our community, professors, teachers, and so on. We need to bring in the right tools. Unless we combine these three, we will not succeed as academic institutions. We will not become institutions of excellence. A very powerful, profound statement by philosopher and spiritual guide Sri Thakur Anukul Chandra. He defines education very differently from traditional educationalists. He says, systematic organization of habits and instincts with the purpose of fulfilling the becoming of life by a graduated active manipulation of behavior may be called education. So he's not talking about business, not talking about strategy, not talking about domain. He says education is about habits, instincts, behavior, and a systematic organization of habits and instincts with the purpose of fulfilling the becoming of life by graduated active manipulation of behavior may be called education, which is a very, very profound statement, as we can see here. So with this, I come to the end of this session. And I have shared my perspective on transforming higher education through a learning and development mindset. Now it's over to you. I will pause for a few minutes and then would love to take your questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It was a wonderful presentation. In spite of the technical glitches we faced in between, it was a great presentation. So majority of them in the chat window have no questions, but they have given saying that it is an excellent presentation. And there was one statement from one of the faculty saying that your disclaimer that in the beginning that you are not a teacher is wrong, because you have gone up to the grassroots to analyze what is that has to be taken as a teacher, and you have taken.
Thank you for your kind words.
One important information. And moreover, there are 2-3 comments saying that from a teacher to a facilitator is a very powerful statement. So because now we are all in the transition period, and we as a teacher has to become a facilitator is a well said statement. And obviously you touched upon a lot of points on multidisciplinary education, and the education will not continue. And overall, if you could also see the chat window, everyone are saying it's a wonderful presentation, because we have been hearing to a lot of technologies, what is important, in-depth knowledge on 4.0 technologies like 5G, RPA, IoT, artificial intelligence, pure technical. But you today, what a different mindset is that in order to make the technologies work, in order to ensure that industry 4.0 technology is reaching the student, a mind shift from the faculties and a mind shift of the students has to be taken. There is the message, great message that you have conveyed, that the mind shift of the faculties and the mind shift of the students has to take a change. And very straight said that universities will not be functioning in the way in which it will be functioning was a very powerful statement, because you are not an educator, but it is a powerful statement for the educators who are sitting here saying that it is a powerful statement. So these are all few important comments which the faculty members have said, and they're all requesting for to share the copy of the presentation. We will request from you, and if you approve, we will share the copy of the presentation also, sir.
Sure.
Overall, in other sessions, we will get some questions saying that what is the important. And there was one common question saying that how these technologies will support in the rural area? That is answered by many of you. If you want, you can answer that also, sir. That is the only one question I could say, but it's a very common question in all the sessions, sir.
Can you repeat the question? I couldn't hear you.
This
Hear the question very well.
technologies are all changing. So when see, majority of the education institutions are all in the rural background, and the students are not up to the mark of the technology. How can whatever you have said, no, from training to transformation of the students are not coping up with the points what we are trying to do, because they are all they cannot be compared with the city student. So they are all from the rural. So any comments you have on that?
Actually, I think you'll be surprised that the students from villages can be more resilient, because this is my experience. And I understand they may not be as tech savvy and as exposed to technology as students from cities and big towns. I'll give the example of my dad, who lives in a tier 2 city. He is 80 years old, and I think when first time I gifted a basic phone to him, basic mobile phone with no data and all of that, he was struggling to use it. He could barely answer my call. If I am calling, or if any friend or family member is calling, he knew that he had to press the green button to be able to talk to that person. That was his level of technology readiness. Today, he uses a smartphone. He takes pictures, he records videos on his smartphone, and he sends the video to all his children and family members using WhatsApp. So sometimes we underestimate people. We underestimate people from villages are not as capable as people from cities. But I would say you'll be surprised that they can be equally competent, because the urge to learn is there. That is the most important thing. It's just a matter of time. They can bridge the gap quickly. Fortunately, today, because of the internet connectivity, the bandwidth, today the entire country is well connected till the last mile. And so today people are exposed to technology. So, I was talking to an educational institution. I was asking them the same question that you do. You are doing online classes, but you are villages where there is no internet connectivity, etc., or the connectivity is low. How do you manage it? How do you manage? The professor told me, look, they can switch over to audio and they can dial into a number and listen to the professor's lecture. So there are a lot of things which are changing, and technology is now accessible in the last mile. We'll be surprised that they can be equally resilient and then expert and competent in this space.
Thank you, sir. So it was, as you rightly said, technology, we should not underestimate anybody by the technology, because technology is also growing. People are also making use of the technology in the right way. So that was a good.
I talked about this homeopath in Indore who uses Facebook Messenger to write prescription for patients all over the world.
Yes,
and he never studied technology in his life. He's a homeopathic doctor, but he uses that today powerfully.
Correct, sir. So thank you very much, sir. So as said, it was a wonderful presentation. Any closing comments you have for the educators who are participating today?
Well, I would just remind something what Confucius said, the great philosopher, about 2,500 years ago. He said, "Tell me, I will forget. Show me, I will remember. Show me, I will understand. And involve me, I will remember." Thank you. That's the power of education. Today, our education is more or less restricted to tell me only. If you look at our classrooms, our PowerPoint presentations, our, the MOOC sessions that universities run is about tell me. But now we need to show them. We also need to involve them. Involve them in real life scenarios, real life situations, real world projects, assignments. Involve them in multicultural, scenarios where they can learn life, learn to deal with ambiguities and conflict. That involvement is important. I think that's the change that universities and educational institutions need to bring in. Something that Confucius said 2005 years ago is powerful even today. That's
Thank
my
you.
closing comment.
Definitely, sir. So it was a great statement as tell me, show me, and involve me was a great statement as rightly said by you. Unless there is an involvement and people are the students or the faculty are involved and used to do the things, it will definitely create a change. So thank you very much for the wonderful session. And as again technology, we could not. Stop the technology. There was some technology glitches. In spite of that, you are able to reconnect, and certain people are asking your contact. I will definitely share your contact because it is there in the presentation. So I will
Yes.
share your contact, and they will definitely write to you. So thank you very much once again. So thank you very much, sir, for giving a wonderful presentation on the learning and development perspective. Because as I rightly said, again I am repeating, technology is important. How we are going to use the technology and how this technology should be taken by the faculties and students is obviously important. Then only technology will also be success. So thank you very much. Stay tuned for us for tomorrow's session. We will join by 10 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you once again.